Your calendar is full. Your contact list expands monthly. You attend events, maintain connections, follow up promptly. Every action feels deliberate, strategic, necessary. But here is what you have not yet confronted. This entire pattern is a structural confession. The moment you chase relationships, you announce your position before speaking a single word. Machiavelli would not ask how many people you know. He would ask, who is forced to calculate the cost of ignoring you? If that question has no answer, everything you call networking is compensation for missing leverage. Society sells networking as the mechanism of advancement. You are taught that relationships unlock doors, that visibility creates opportunity, that expanding your circle translates to upward movement. This narrative appears everywhere because it is harmless to existing power. Those at the top encourage it publicly while practicing the opposite privately. They do not expand their networks. They eliminate access, reduce obligations, and operate through scarcity. Meanwhile, you are kept busy attending gatherings, maintaining connections, and generating the sensation of progress without threatening any structure that matters. Networking does not elevate you. It stabilizes the hierarchy by converting ambition into predictable, non-threatening behavior. You stay in motion. You never move position. And the system depends on your belief that if you network harder, longer, more strategically, power will eventually notice. It will not. Machiavelli understood a law that most never confront. Relationships do not create power. Power creates relationships. Those without leverage initiate contact. Those with leverage decide who is allowed proximity. This is not philosophy. It is structural mechanics. Every hierarchy in history has obeyed this rule. Wherever power genuinely operates, whether in ancient courts, political hierarchies, or modern corporations, the powerful are defined by selective absence, not constant presence. Machiavelli would tell you this directly. If you are still trying to build relationships, you have not yet built position. Power begins the moment others must account for you, whether you appear or not. Until then, every introduction, every follow-up, every maintained connection is a signal that you are standing outside the structure, looking for entry. 1. Leverage precedes relationships, never follows them. Machiavelli did not teach relationship building because relationships, to him, were consequences, not causes. You do not gain power by knowing the right people. You gain power by controlling something those people cannot function without. This is the inversion most never grasp. Networking operates on the assumption that connection leads to opportunity. Machiavelli's logic runs in reverse. Opportunity only flows toward existing control points. Relationships then reorganize themselves automatically around that control. When you hold a bottleneck, decisions pass through you. Information cannot move without you. Timing depends on your participation. At that moment, you do not seek relationships. They form without effort. Others approach, not because you are likable, but because excluding you creates risk. This is why Machiavelli would consider networking a confession of structural weakness. The one who must initiate is always the one who needs more. Need flows downward. Always. If you are chasing connection, you are admitting through behavior that you lack the leverage to pull others toward you naturally. Machiavelli would not tell you to network better. He would tell you to stop networking entirely and build a constraint point that others must navigate around. Until you control a bottleneck, every handshake is provisional, every contact is replaceable. You are tolerated, not required. Machiavelli's world had no space for those who were merely tolerated. He observed that power structures across centuries shared one unbreakable pattern. Those who controlled critical resources, timing, or information never needed to advertise their value. Their value was demonstrated through the structural impossibility of proceeding without them. When a military campaign could not launch without your supply line, you did not need to befriend generals. When a political decision could not advance without your faction's support, you did not need to charm senators. The structure itself enforced your relevance. 2. The inner circle is built on risk, not rapport. Machiavelli understood that proximity to power is never granted as reward for loyalty or charm. The inner circle is not open to those who are pleasant. It is reserved for those whose exclusion would destabilize the structure. This is the mechanism that networking believers never decode. They think warmth, consistency, and emotional intelligence earn access. But power does not operate through affection. It operates through calculation. Who controls critical information? Who gates essential resources? Who holds the capacity to delay or accelerate decisions? These are the only questions that matter. When someone's absence introduces danger, that person is retained automatically. Not because they are liked, because they are structurally necessary. Machiavelli observed this in every court and battlefield. The inner circle was cold, tense, and often hostile internally, yet held together by mutual dependency. Each member knew that the others could not be removed without cost. This is why networking fails to penetrate power. Networking builds familiarity. Power requires calculated unease. Familiarity generates comfort. Comfort erodes authority. Machiavelli would never teach you to become more likable. He would teach you to become more difficult to exclude. When ignoring you becomes a strategic error, access is no longer negotiated. It is conceded. And concession is the only currency power respects. Those who hold real authority do not care whether you admire them. They care whether you must account for them when making decisions. If the system can proceed smoothly without you, then no amount of rapport will ever place you inside the center. Machiavelli saw princes fall because they surrounded themselves with agreeable courtiers instead of dangerous but necessary allies. The inner circle of any serious power structure is not a social club. It is a collection of mutual hostages, each holding something the others cannot afford to lose. 3. Obligation is a restraint that weakens the one who carries it. Machiavelli was obsessed with freedom of maneuver. Every obligation you accept is a tether. Every relationship you maintain creates an expectation. Every promise you make reduces your range of action. Networking multiplies obligations exponentially. You owe follow-ups, responses, appearances, favors. Each one binds you further. This is why those with power instinctively reduce their networks. They are not antisocial. They are protecting operational flexibility. Machiavelli would observe that the one bound by the most commitments is never the one in control. Power requires the capacity to act without explanation, to refuse without consequence, to disappear without damage. Networking destroys this capacity. It transforms you into someone who must maintain goodwill, who cannot afford to offend, who must keep every connection warm. You become predictable. Predictability is vulnerability. Machiavelli taught that unpredictability itself is a weapon. When others cannot anticipate your actions, they must prepare for multiple contingencies. This forces them into defensive positions even when you have done nothing. But if you are entangled in a web of relational obligations, your actions become readable. People know you will respond. They know you will show up. They know you need their approval. And once they know, they no longer fear miscalculating. Machiavelli would strip away every non-essential relationship without hesitation. Not from cruelty, but from clarity. He would ask, does this connection increase your leverage or dilute it? If it does not tilt the balance in your favor, it is weight you carry for no strategic return. He observed that princes who owed too many favors could not act decisively when circumstances demanded it. The more obligations you carry, the narrower your field of possible action becomes. 4. Visibility without power is exposure, not influence. Machiavelli understood the danger of being seen without being feared. Networking makes you visible. It puts you in rooms, on lists, in conversations. But visibility without structural weight is not influence. It is exposure. You become known, but not necessary, recognized, but not retained. This is the trap intelligent people fall into most frequently. They confuse presence with position. They believe that if enough people know their name, power will eventually flow toward them. But power does not reward familiarity. It rewards indispensability. Machiavelli would tell you that being difficult to read is more valuable than being easy to like. Ambiguity creates hesitation. Hesitation forces caution. Caution is the behavioral signature of respect and power dynamics. When people are uncertain of your boundaries, your intentions, or your capacity to retaliate, they adjust their behavior preemptively. This is influence, not because you threatened anyone, but because they cannot afford to guess wrong. Networking destroys this dynamic. It makes you transparent. It reveals your desires, your needs, your eagerness to be included. Every proactive approach broadcasts intent, and intent, once visible, is leveraged against you. Machiavelli operated in shadows not because he feared the light, but because shadows force others to move carefully. If you are constantly visible, constantly available, constantly explaining yourself, you are teaching others that you can be dismissed without risk. Machiavelli would reduce his appearances to moments of maximum impact, ensuring that every time he entered a room, something shifted. He would never attend an event simply to be seen. Excessive visibility without corresponding power creates a dangerous illusion. You appear important. People recognize you. But when critical decisions are made, you are not consulted. Visibility gave you the sensation of inclusion without the substance of position. 5. Selection replaces networking the moment power exists. Machiavelli would observe that networking and selection cannot coexist. They are opposing states. Networking is the behavior of someone seeking entry. Selection is the posture of someone who controls it. The transition between these two states marks the boundary between powerlessness and power. When you network, you move outward. You approach, you initiate, you maintain. You are asking to be included. When you select, others move toward you. They approach, they request, they wait. They are asking to be considered. This is not a personality shift. It is a structural inversion. The moment you control something others cannot bypass, the direction of relational energy reverses. You no longer need to be remembered. You need to be reached. And being reached requires something networking never provides: a bottleneck. Machiavelli built his entire philosophy on the understanding that power does not flow to those who want it most. It flows to those who control what others need most. Once you hold that control, relationships cease to be something you build. They become something you filter. You do not expand your circle. You narrow it. You do not accept every invitation. You decline most. You do not maintain every connection. You eliminate the ones that add no leverage. This is not arrogance. It is structural necessity. The powerful cannot afford to be accessible. Accessibility dilutes value. Scarcity concentrates it. Machiavelli would never tell you to network smarter. He would tell you to stop networking entirely and build a position so critical that others are forced to seek you, regardless of whether you ever seek them. He watched ambitious men waste years cultivating relationships with those they thought held power, only to discover that true power resided elsewhere. Meanwhile, those who controlled the mechanisms, the supply chains, the information flows, the appointment processes, sat quietly and were approached by everyone. Selection was effortless, and networking became something they observed others doing from a position of structural superiority. 6. Power is measured by what stalls in your absence, not what moves in your presence. Machiavelli measured power not through action, but through absence. The true test was never what you could accomplish when present, but what failed to happen when you were not. This is the metric networking culture never teaches. Networkers measure success by how many meetings they attend, how many people they know, how full their calendars remain. But Machiavelli would measure success by asking, if you disappeared tomorrow, what would stop? What decisions would stall? What processes would break? Whose plans would become riskier? If the answer is nothing, then every relationship you have is ceremonial. You are a participant, not a pillar. Power exists only when your absence introduces cost, when alternatives become less attractive, when moving forward without you carries strategic danger. At that point, you are no longer networking. You are no longer building relationships. You are being accounted for. And being accounted for is the only state that matters in Machiavelli's world. This is why he would never care how many people attended your events or responded to your messages. He would care whether a single person, someone who controls outcomes, is forced to pause and reconsider their approach because you might not cooperate. That pause is power. Everything else is theater. Networking trains you to stay busy. Machiavelli would train you to become unavoidable. One creates the sensation of movement. The other creates actual leverage. And leverage is the only thing power cannot ignore. He observed that when truly powerful figures withdrew from political life, the entire structure destabilized. Factions that had been held in balance through their presence erupted into conflict. Decisions that had been routine became impossible. This was not because these figures were beloved or skilled at relationships. It was because their position in the structure made them load-bearing. Remove them, and the architecture collapsed. 7. Networking is psychological compensation for positional uncertainty. Machiavelli understood that all human behavior reveals internal state. Networking, at its psychological core, is not a strategy. It is a response to uncertainty about where you stand within a structure. When you lack clear positional markers, you attach yourself to others to locate yourself relationally. When you cannot see your leverage, you borrow proximity to those who have it, hoping it will transfer. But proximity does not transfer power. It only creates the illusion of participation. Machiavelli would identify networking as a self-soothing mechanism disguised as ambition. You stay busy. You meet people. You generate activity. This creates the sensation of progress without requiring you to confront the structural reality. You do not control a bottleneck. The fear driving networking is specific and universal. It is the fear of being left outside when real decisions are made, not being invited, not being informed, not being considered. This fear does not emerge from weakness of character. It emerges from accurate perception. You sense that a game is being played at a level you cannot see. Networking feels like the only available response. If you cannot see the game, you attach yourself to players, hoping they will pull you in. But Machiavelli would tell you this directly. The powerful do not pull others in. They filter others out. Networking is the activity of those standing outside the structure looking for entry. It keeps you hoping. It keeps you moving. But it never changes your position, because position is not determined by how many people you know. It is determined by what you control that others need. Until you shift focus from connection to constraint, networking will remain what it has always been: compensation for missing leverage. Machiavelli would not comfort you here. He would strip away the illusion that your activity matters. If you are networking because you fear exclusion, you have already been excluded. 8. Networking exposes intent and creates strategic vulnerability. Machiavelli was acutely aware that every action communicates. In power dynamics, the one who reveals intent first is always beneath the one who reads it. Networking is an intent broadcasting system. Every proactive approach signals desire. Every maintained relationship reveals what you value. Every follow-up demonstrates need. You may believe you are building strategic connections, but Machiavelli would observe that you are drawing a map of your own vulnerabilities for anyone skilled enough to read behavior. When you approach someone, you announce that you need something from them. When you follow up, you reveal that their response matters to your plans. When you maintain contact, you signal that their approval or inclusion carries weight. None of this is neutral. All of it is data. And in Machiavelli's world, data is weaponized. Those with power do not need to interrogate you. They simply observe who you pursue, where you appear, and how eagerly you seek inclusion. Your networking pattern tells them everything. It shows them your ambitions, your insecurities, your dependencies. Once they possess this map, they can exploit it, not through overt manipulation, but through calculated absence. They know you need them more than they need you. This imbalance governs every subsequent interaction. Machiavelli would never allow himself to be the one initiating contact, not from pride, but from strategic necessity. The moment you initiate, you have revealed your position. The other party now knows they have something you want. And in power dynamics, wanting is weakness. This is why the powerful are difficult to read. They do not explain themselves. They do not reveal preferences. They do not make their intentions transparent. Ambiguity itself becomes a weapon. When others cannot determine what you want or what you will do, they must prepare for multiple contingencies. But networking destroys ambiguity. It makes you transparent. It teaches others that you are hungry for inclusion, eager for validation. Machiavelli would tell you that strategic opacity is more valuable than tactical visibility. Underscore, 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 underscore. If you have followed this logic to its conclusion, you now face a decision that cannot be postponed. You must choose between two incompatible frames. The first frame is the one society handed you. Relationships create opportunity. Visibility generates advancement. Effort translates to position. The second frame is the one Machiavelli lived by. Position creates relationships. Scarcity generates value. Leverage
translates to power.
These frames cannot coexist. One requires you to keep networking. The other requires you to stop entirely and build
a bottleneck. Most people never
make this choice consciously. They continue networking because it feels productive, because it creates motion, because stopping feels like giving up. But motion is not progress when the structure remains unchanged. Networking keeps you at the edge. It keeps you hoping. It keeps you asking for access. And as long as you are asking, you are not controlling. Machiavelli would not offer you comfort here. He would tell you that if you are still uncertain whether you should be networking or selecting, the uncertainty itself reveals your position. Those with power do not wonder whether they should be networking. The question does not arise. They operate in a different frame entirely, one where relationships form automatically around structural necessity, not social effort. The shift from networking to selection is not a technique you apply. It is a consequence of controlling something others cannot bypass. Until you control that bottleneck, no amount of reframing will change the reality. You can stop networking tomorrow, but if you have not built leverage, stopping will only isolate you. This is the harsh clarity Machiavelli offers. He does not promise that understanding power will give you power. He promises only that understanding power will prevent you from wasting time on activities that signal its absence. If you lack leverage, the correct response is not better networking. It is building the leverage first. Find the constraint point. Control the information flow. Gate the critical resource. Master the timing mechanism. Become the person whose absence creates hesitation. Once that position exists, relationships will reorganize themselves without your input. People will approach. Invitations will arrive. Access will be negotiated from the other side. Not because you became more likable, but because you became structurally necessary. And necessity is the only force powerful enough to make others come to you. For the next 24 hours, you will conduct a diagnostic exercise that Machiavelli would approve of. You will not network. You will not initiate contact. You will not follow up, maintain connections, or respond to non-essential requests. You will create deliberate silence. And then you will observe. Who reaches out when you do not? Who adjusts their behavior when you disappear? Whose plans encounter difficulty because you are unavailable? These answers will tell you more about your position than any networking event ever could. If silence reveals that nothing changes, you have your answer. Your network is not leverage. It is activity disguised as progress. But if silence creates friction, if people begin asking questions, if someone who controls outcomes reaches out to ensure your cooperation, then you have something. Not yet power, but the beginning of it. A signal that your absence has weight. From that signal, you can build. You can identify which relationships matter structurally and which exist only socially. You can strip away the obligations that bind you without returning value. You can begin operating like someone who controls access rather than someone who seeks it. Machiavelli would not tell you this will be easy. He would tell you it will be clarifying. Most people fear silence because they fear irrelevance. But irrelevance cannot be hidden by constant presence. If you are irrelevant, networking only makes it visible to more people. Silence, by contrast, reveals truth. It shows you exactly where you stand. And once you know where you stand, you can stop pretending and start building. The game is not won by those who know the most people. It is won by those who control the fewest, most critical points. Stop expanding. Start constraining. Stop attending. Start selecting. Stop networking. Start building the position that makes networking unnecessary. This is not advice. This is structural law. Machiavelli did not bend it. Neither will you.